Hey, thank you all for inviting me today. We're going to do some little boxes. A lot of you have come up here in the front. I wish I could claim credit for thinking of this idea. I belong to a group, some of you other guys do too, the WOW group, World of Woodturners. This was Hayes Rutherford, lives in, I believe it's Idaho. See what it looks like here. There you go. He put this on a WOW site. He did a few of those, and it looked like this. And thought, hey, that's a pretty cool idea, and I tried one. This was my first, and I looked at it and I said, wow, that's a cute little box. What are you going to use it for? We put them on the shelf. But I will tell you, gentlemen, when you're going to give your lady a ring or some earrings or whatever, a small box like this, ladies keep these little boxes. I don't know why. My wife's got a drawer full of these little cardboard boxes. There's a use for it. I had one guy, and I don't know which club, I demoed this at several clubs. He emailed me afterwards. He said, you know, I took a little clear cap off of something and made it the right depth. I put my toothpicks in it. He's got a stem coming out of the cap, ties into here, picks it up. You know, I haven't made one yet. Worked for him. I'm going to make one. It's a good idea. After I saw that, I emailed Hayes, and I sent him a picture of that little box, and I sent him a picture of this one. This was the second one I did. And I said, everybody loves that little box, but in Pennsylvania, our trees have roots on them. So he emailed back, I'm too cheap to spend the wood, or to waste the wood. So, and then we also, we're not worried about a grain match on this. If you're doing a regular little box, you want the grain to line up. On this one, we're going to wood burn the heck out of this. So we need some way to keep it, because some of you were up here and this is a little tighter than it should be because it's gotten humid. We need to keep the same direction, because even though this is, it's end grain, it will move a little bit. The center of the tree on this one is clear over here. So that's the first thing everybody looks at. They think it's natural bark. But when you look at the grain on that, you'll see where the center of the tree is. So I'm going to start off with this little piece of ball bat blank. You can see it's a junk piece of wood. You know, you're not going to build, or you're not going to make hardly anything out of that. It's got a split in it. We're going to use up that junk wood. We don't care about our center. We want to be close to center, but we're not measuring anything. This is a nice, quick little thing that you can turn. Once you've done a couple of them, they go really quick, and, oh, here it is. Really quick, you don't have to measure anything, and because, you know, all the trees are different. I use the safety center. I took a class with Derek Weidman. Any of you seen Derek Weidman turn? He does the crazy animal heads. Does a lot of off-center stuff. This is all he uses to turn on, and his are flopping like crazy. And after I took that class, I realized how useful this is. I used to use a steb center before that, and still do on occasion. The steb center will actually drill in a little bit. These will just spin. And if you happen to get too big a cut, get a catch. Any of you guys ever had one of them? That catch? Anyway, it'll stop. What I want to do, first thing I want to do, is establish a tenon on there, on both sides. This is basic box making. I'm going to go through it because I might do it a little different than you. We might have somebody here that hasn't done a box. This might be all they learn out of the demonstration, is how to make a box, which is fine. The nice thing about this, making these boxes, is only half of the turning. We don't have to finish anything on the outside. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make our tenons on here. I'm not worried about shaping the box. I'm going to take a little bit of this rough stuff off first, just so it doesn't splinter and come out. Turn the speed down. Talking about your safety, that's a excellent habit to get into. I've got a 40-40 grind on there. That's Stuart Batty's grind. Doesn't matter what grind you use. I happen to like this for making the tenons. What keeps that safety drive working is the friction. So that's why I had to tighten that up. Now here's why I like this particular grind. When I'm going to do my tenon, if I have a regular, the Wolverine thing, my hand's going to be over here. The 40 degrees is going to be here. Not a big difference. This also has a very sharp point on it. Not that you can't do that with the other one. But if any of you have ever seen Stuart Batty face off a blank with that particular grind, that is ready for finish. That's a mirror finish on that. I can't do that with the other grind. I use the Wolverine grind. I use several different grinds for different things. I'm not bad-mouthing one or the other. The whole key is to get used to what you like. Now I want at least a 2-inch for the tenon. That's pretty close. Measure your jaws before you're going to do a tenon. All you guys know this, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it. Sometimes you'll end up redoing a tenon because a little bit too small. To do my tenons, I use a dovetail chuck. I use a dovetail chuck because I can use a shorter tenon. If you're going to use the standard one-way jaws, you need a little bit longer tenon so you get enough grip on it, because the standard dovetail, these serrated jaws, are straight. So you need a little bit more. With the dovetail, this is plenty to hold that. I do a sushi plate that's a 20-inch platter, and I have a 1/16 of an inch in there that I can hold on these jaws. To do that, I have to true the jaws up. That's a whole different demo. This is a Bedan. This is about the only use I've found for a Bedan. Can you see the angle on that? That is the angle of my jaws here. So it makes making the tenons really quick and easy. I got down to my rough diameter. Don't tell anybody I moved the tool rest while it's running. I'm not going to talk through this one, I'll just make it. Show you how quick. Okay, that's all it takes to make a tenon. To make a box, we're going to grab that on both ends so we can hollow it out. Any of you have ever demonstrated anywhere else? You get in such habits at home, everything is here, and then all of a sudden you're working somewhere else. So now we're going to part this thing in two. I like to always, when it's convenient, when it's not in the way, I always stick my tail rest up there. I'm going to be working here, that's not in the way. No reason not to have it. If you're between centers, your odds of throwing a piece off the lathe are very, very slight. If you're just in the chuck and you happen to get a catch, that's when you can throw a piece. So this is going to be the top of my box. We're going to have some the hinge from when you cut the chainsaw there. We're going to have that sticking up. And, you know, we can allow a little bit for play. So I'm going to park down in here somewhere. I'm going to go in quite a ways. I don't care about my cut here. We're going to make a small box. I know I have torn grain there. I'm going to clean it up. And then I have a narrow parting tool to go the rest of the way. Now another advantage of holding this or having this tailstock here is that when I part this off, it won't go flying. It'll just kind of wobble. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep a little bit of this inner circle right here. I'm going to leave just a little bit on the top for a gauge. I'll turn the speed down, go in a little bit. Now incidentally, this is an old kitchen knife. Now I'm going to go on an angle. I'm not making my cut any wider, but I'm taking some out on the inside. That's so I don't catch. When I'm parting things off, I can turn it way down slow. See the advantage of having the tailstock there? Okay, so I left this really rough. I just did a quick cut on that parting tool. Hey, when Hayes first did the boxes of his, he was a timber guy or something, and he did the chainsaw cut on them. As I'm walking through the woods around my house here, I see rotted stumps, and I thought, well, I'll make rotted stumps. People don't like them. They like to see that little hinge on the chainsaw. So I've made a few of them, and you know, these are more popular, so you stick with it. When I said I'm going to leave just a little bit there, so I know where my lip from the bottom is. That's that line there. I'm going to go in here a little bit with a parting tool before I clean it up. That's going to be my gauge. And then I'm going to clean up this edge. Now when you're starting on these, a lot of you, I had a lot of problem with this when I was young, newer at turning. If you have this gouge turned a little bit, it's going to skate on you. If you have it perfectly vertical, and you can look down these flukes to see vertical, you can start and you can get a nice cut on there. I'm looking straight over top so I can get a nice straight line. I don't care about that in there because I want a straight line so that when I carve this box, you don't see that line around it. I need a little bit off the inside. And I almost lost my mark. If you're having a problem, a little bit of a shear scrape here. I'm going for a flat surface from the center out. Or not the center, but where this line is. Make it a little bit bigger. That little recess line I had before. I don't care about the inside, but I do want straight here. That's going to be good. I'm going to a spindle gouge. I'm going to make I'm putting a little bit of a dome in there just because it looks interesting. We're going to go a little bit deeper so that lid just doesn't fall off in the wind. At that point, we can sand that. If you want, in some of these, I take a little triangle tool, point tool, and I'll put little beads in there, or just little divots in there. Sometimes I take a piece of ebony and burn them in. I'm just gonna do a little bit of sanding there. Anytime I'm not at home, if I'm going out on, if club demo or our club demonstrates at different craft fairs and things, take strips of your sandpaper, take them in the order you want them. I've got 120, 180, probably 220 and 320. Stick them together, staple them together. They're right there, they're handy, and you can just rip a little piece off when you need it. If you're doing a bowl or something, you need a big piece, but it's nice and handy. Okay, so we're going to sand it. I'm not going to get real fussy on this. I'm going down to 320. Microcrystalline wax. This happens to be Dr. Kirk's. I've had this for 6 or 7 years. It's about half gone. You can see I didn't put much on there. I take just a regular roll of paper towels, cut it in half, because I found out that I end up ripping these in half the time. They're sitting right up here above my lathe. It just saves extra, having that extra big roll hanging there. Just one time we were doing a demo in Pittsburgh, and a guy goes, "What are you using toilet paper for?" This wax, you put a little pressure on it with your finger, it melts in, and for lathe work, the top is done. I'm going to keep that there because now we're going to do the bottom, and we have to make it. I made that top a little bit bigger than it needs to be. That gives me some room to play there. So the next thing I'm going to do is clean up this edge and establish my width for that lip on the top. Again, I've got my gouge with the sharp point on it. If you are uncomfortable starting at the edge like I did before, do a little shear scrape on there. That'll give you a smooth place to start. You can put your gouge right against that and go in. Now I'm watching that I take the same, whoop, I went deeper. I wanted the same width cut, the wood I'm removing. That would get me flat. That's good. I need to take some down there. I'm doing this on a little bit of an angle. I can clean it up later. The reason for the angle is at some point this is going to fit. It just barely hits the top. This is the part of box making where you'll take a little extra time. If you're doing a box to impress your other wood turners on the table over there, you're going to want to get a nice tight fit on this. Almost like that. If you're doing a box for your lady to keep her, or gentleman, I'm sorry ladies, to keep something in, you want a one-handed fit. By that I mean you want to go like that. You don't want to go like that big box that's swelled up and you have to have two hands to open it. Okay. That's a good fit on there. I'm going to take a little bit off this face because it's too deep. Okay. I've got my loose fit. I'm happy with that. We're going to hollow the box. At this point, this is where you decide what you're going to put in it. You're going to put an engagement ring in there, then you just want it wide enough or high enough for the ring. If you want a toothpick holder, you've got to measure your toothpicks. Would have started with a bigger blank to start with. I hollow in reverse. A lot of you probably weren't watching when I set up. When I put my lathe on, I always put my lathe on, and I give it that. I have a pretty delicate touch after many years of wood turning. If I won't let a novice turn in reverse without setting these screws. Or if I don't know what you're turning, I won't let you turn in reverse with that. Just take that for what it's worth. If I'm turning, you know, normally I go like this. So I do a lot of hollow forms, and I find it's easier to be right here. I got the tool locked into my chest, and it's very comfortable for me. If I'm doing in normal mode, I go like this. It's something that you have to experiment and get used to. I like to use a spindle gouge for a lot of my, at least rough hollowing. You can use whatever is comfortable for you. We just had a class in Pittsburgh, and the gal had a scraper. I said, that's fine. I am just a little bit clockwise. I don't know if you can see it. That's an exaggeration. If you go straight in, it's going to do funny things. Or if you're back this way, it's going to do. If I was turning this way, I would be a little bit counterclockwise. A couple degrees, 5 degrees, whatever, just enough so I'm cutting on one side of the flute. I have a scraper here that has a double grind on it, and I'm scraping either level or downhill a little bit just to clean that up. Okay, I'm not real happy with this out here. There's some tear out. Today I'm not going to worry about it. You all will get the gist of what we're doing. Also, to save time, you saw me put the wax in the on the lid. Same thing, you put the wax on there and finish it with wax inside. If you like another finish, by all means, this is your box. With the wax, I found out that finish just keep moving. Lacquer would probably finish pretty quick. If I'm going to put some varnish in there, it's going to take a while to dry. So that's the reason I went with the wax. It's not a high traffic area. So at that point, we've got the box done. If you were going to make a finished box, let's say you're going to make a nice curve on that, you'd leave it in the chuck, bring your tailstock up, form your, however you want that, you know, put it on a jam chuck and turn it around. So at this point, we get to the carving. Here's where it's a lot easier than, okay, so the reason I did all this rigmarole here is I'm going to do some carving on this. I don't want to mess up my chuck or your chuck or my tailstock or anything. So I've got this on an extension here. It's away, and this is out of the way. For this afternoon's class, I made a couple of these out of wood so that whoever's doing the afternoon class can. What I use for this is I use an Arbortech. That's what I use now. When I started doing these, I had a Merlin. I had a Merlin with a little chainsaw wheel. And it really did a nice job. It really took it off fast. I was a little worried about that Merlin because I was a little worried about the chainsaw cutter. I mean, the chainsaw itself really scares me. And I made my living in construction. I used all kinds of tools. I took a class with Chris Ramsey down in Kentucky making hats. He showed me his brother does horse carvings. He uses this little cutter. And he showed me what happened when it slipped out of his hand. It took a big gouge here, went right up his neck. He came within millimeters of dying. It didn't cut an artery. This is basically a one-handed tool. It's really easy to use. It's a good quality tool. It's well made. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bad-mouthing this. I can't recommend using a chainsaw cutter on this, and I haven't even put the chainsaw cutter on that. Was at one of the symposiums. They had these little, help me out, I'm drawing a saber tooth. These little saber tooth wheels. This cuts as fast as this, and yes, this could tear you up if it got out of control. I've got two hands on this tool. I only had one on this hand, on this tool. I feel that's safer. I do a lot of wood carving. I always have a glove, the fibers, Kevlar fibers. Is that going to keep from cutting through there? I don't have a lot of faith in that. Is it going to lessen the damage? Yes. If I'm using a small tool like a Dremel, I always have this on because I do think that this would stall the Dremel. It just binds up. Again, is it going to do damage? Yes, it is. The difference is maybe a Band-Aid or a trip to the hospital, or maybe a trip to the hospital for stitches versus losing a finger. So again, going back to your little safety talk here, this is your best safety tool right here. Think before you do something. The carving on this goes pretty quick. It makes noise, it makes dust. I use earplugs, I use a dust mask, and I use a face mask. I'm just going to do a couple little things on here. I'm still going to put the earplugs in just because. This thing isn't terribly loud, but I've already lost enough hearing that why take a chance. Like I said, I'm just going to do a little bit of carving here, and we'll put that piece on that is almost done. I'm going to lock the lathe. I keep the lathe locked because I can move this by releasing the tension. What I want to do is first, before I took that out of the chuck, I'm going to make a couple little cuts, 3 or 4 of them, to within 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to make a couple of cuts while it's in the chuck. I'm lining up that little split I had on there, so I've got a grain match. Now, am I worried about being perfectly on center? No, I'm not going to turn the lathe on. I've got the lathe locked. In fact, if I hit the switch, it'd just go buzz and, okay. I'm going to cut where it's comfortable. I've got 2 hands on the tool. Bunch of different directions. At some point, we want a registration mark. Two hands until it stopped. At some point, we want a registration mark so that whenever we put that back, and I noticed all you guys were good at it, you turn it back to where it belongs. So if you're at 90 degrees, you could see with the ones that went around, if you're at 90 degrees, it's going to bind, shrink at different widths. I'll put one in that's more round at that point. Don't criticize me on some of those cuts there. I was trying to save a little bit of time. In fact, I'm going to bring the Dremel out when I put the next one on. So here we've got one that, with that little back and forth grinding, I did all that. I got tired of putting that little scar in there. And being wood turners, we all like to have a burl, so I put burl on it. So some of my newer ones have burls, some of them have both. It's like whatever you happen to like at the time. So So I showed you the fast tool, and again, if you don't have that particular Arbortech or saber-tooth thing, anything that cuts works. I have a Dremel. I like the Dremel for the little detail work, getting in here close. This particular cutter, a lot of you guys have them. It's a little triangle thing, and there's 3 cutters that are offset, an 1/8" bit. I know some of you guys have them. All wood turners have these. Any wood carvers. Roto-chisel, yeah. I can't remember the cost. They're like all the carbide cutters. They're probably $25 or something a piece. Come up and look at this afterwards. It's a really nice cutter. I like the better Dremels that have the variable speed on them. And again, I've got 2 hands on the tool. I can do the same type cutting with this that I did with that big tool. It's going to take longer. One of those saber-tooth things with all the hairs on it. This will make straighter lines. So basically what we're looking at here is we're looking at shape. We want to get our shape. I think they look better with roots, so I stick roots on them. But anyway, the small one that I passed around didn't have roots. You all noted, you all saw that when you passed it around. It's not as interesting, but yeah, I've seen some trees like that. Sky's the limit. I'm going to show you in a little bit that most of my things have grown straight. When we get to the final stage in this, we're going to kick this one a little bit, and I'll show you how to do that. So once you have it ground to this point, okay, wood burning. You need a lot of heat. And I'm not going to do a lot of this because I don't want to smoke you all out. I don't want to set off smoke detectors. You need enough heat that you're making smoke here. It might even flare up a little bit now and then. So I have 2 wood burners. I have a razor tip. It barely puts out enough heat. Razor tip is made more for the Cynthia Gibson type turning, where it's not real hot, and you can get the browns. You can turn it down a little bit. You can turn this one down, but you can also, when you turn it up, it gets pretty hot. I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty hot. Different directions. I'm going down in the hollows on this thing. Actually, that smoke's going straight up. So I'm going down in the hollows, and I'm doing pretty much straight. I'm going to go all the way around like that. When I get all the way around like that, I'm going to do some angles. When I get done with that, I'm going to do some angles this way. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to really burn down in there. Just evaporate some wood. And that makes it look more like the roots that are growing out over top of the ground. So I do all that on the base of on the side of the tree. The burls, if you've noticed looking at burls, they're more dotted, let's call it. So I just go in with the end. Just keep doing a random tapping. And sometimes you can make it a little bit deeper because all these burls have imperfections. That's about all we're going to do on the smoke. That gets us up to this point. That gets us up to this point where we do all that wood burning. So you guys probably want to see how that little hinge gets on there, huh? any saw, it doesn't matter. I've got an old carpenter saw here, 8-point saw. The dovetail saws work nice. I even used, on some of them, I used a little battery operated reciprocating saw, a little Milwaukee. So let's just make it anyway. I want it rough. I'm not trying to make a smooth cut. I'm letting the saw go like this. The dovetail saws that you use, or the Japanese cut saws, you're probably going to get a nicer line with it. So I cut part way through. And then I'm going to look at this side. Now you do have to keep in mind that that little divot you made in the top there, if you went real deep, you're going to have a problem with it. I'm looking at this cut here. I'm going to try and line up with that. If I don't, it's not a big problem. I'm all the way into that because that bark breaks off. It never splintered. Okay. You can see I went to where I just met myself there. And I met my cut over on this other side, but the center has a little bit of a... So we're just going to tap, 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 and sneak up on that cut. This is the part of the tree that would have fallen over. Small cuts. You probably can't see what I'm doing there because of my hands in the way of the camera. Whoops. Well, this one doesn't have much of a hinge. I didn't say they were all going to be perfect. So you want to take little bites when you get closer, not that big monster that I just took. And this is that point where how to remove the bottom. This is something that even if you're doing a regular box, not a stump box, you still have to do this. We want to get rid of that tenon. The same as any bowl, any box, anything you're doing, we have to take that off at the end. We have a guy that brings this cabinet grade plywood into our club. He brings it in by the truckload every month. We all have more of this than we can use the rest of our lives. I use it for waste blocks, glue blocks, jam chucks, jigs. It's very stable. Plywood doesn't move in one direction. It stays pretty stable. If I'm going to do a glue block, if I've got a real expensive piece of wood here, I'm going to face that off, have a spot around here nice and smooth for the glue, a little bit hollow in there. Glue my expensive piece of wood to here, and then I can use it for that. In this case, we're going to do a jam chuck. So a jam chuck for here. We're going to get our width. Your left side hits the lathe or hits your wood. The right side is, an 1/8 of an inch or so proud. If your right side hits, it's going to come throw it back at you. Again, I'm going to put that a little bit of an angle. You probably can't see it from there, but I was in just a little bit that way. Still a little big. The reason for the angle, when it first goes in, when it first touches, I can then straighten out and be the right width that I want. If it goes in halfway, I know that's where my diameter is. You can see that went in just a hair. That's my right diameter. correct diameter, I should say. At that point, I take my parting tool. I'm going to pick that spot halfway in and go in there at a little bit deeper than what this lip is. That's a good tight fit. Now the only problem with that good tight fit is it has to go a little deeper, and I also have to face it off to make sure it's at 90 degrees to the bed of the lathe. When you're making these jam chucks, you want to sneak up on it. If it's loose, it's not going to work because you want this to stay in by itself. So take your time, make a couple cuts. If you get just a hair small or a hair big with this diameter, a paper towel will work. So that's on there, that's just a hair big. Now it's tight. You could probably go with a couple of paper towels. I wouldn't go too much further. So now we're going to take this bottom off. So take the bottom off. We've got our tailstock up for support. We're in our jam chuck. And very gently, we're going to take your favorite gouge, whatever it happens to be, and with small cuts, take that off. I want to do something a little different here. I made a jam chuck with a little bit of an offset. This is an experiment. You can't see it. Right there, I have about 1/4 of an inch there and less than 1/8 over here. So it's twisted, it's on a little bit of an angle. When I put that in there, you're going to see that piece wobbling. Okay, how did I do that, you ask? I had it between centers for my first one. I moved my center over 1/8 of an inch, so it's wobbling a little bit, and that did that second cut. The second cut is the one that I'm going to put in the lathe. Incidentally, this is a world premiere for this for me. I've never done one of these like this. See how it wobbles? So I want to take, I've already decided, I want this tree leaning this way a little bit. Whichever way. So I'm going to take some off at this side. So I've got this so that this side is sticking out more than that side. You see where the roots are? So I'm going to end up taking some of these roots off. So we're going to be on a different center. I turn my speed down so I make sure everything's, and see I can feel some vibration in there. So just getting rid of waste. I'm not taking a real big heavy cut. I'm looking straight down over it so I can see I can see the air that I'm not turning. I'm pushing pretty hard down on that tool rest so this tool doesn't bounce around. And you can see that's probably only a 30-second that I'm taking off of there. So it's a real light cut. Okay, I need some more. Now, if you're not comfortable coming in with that cut, do a shear scrape on it. But basically, from where I'm touching out there, you see I'm hitting the bevel. I'm not doing any cutting until I roll in a little bit. Like I said, I'm pushing down really hard on that tool rest so that the tool doesn't bounce. If I didn't have that glove on, you could see white knuckles on that. Now, you've heard it said, see, now I've gotten just a little bit of tear out, not bad. I'm sure you've all heard it said that you get a better cut with high speed. The truth of it is, if you're at a lower speed and you slow down with your tool going in, you'll still get a good cut. I'm going to scrape that a little bit, do a little shear scrape on it, because I had a high spot right here. What I'm doing here is just making sure that it sits flat on the table. I still need a little bit out here. And if it helps, a little pencil line where you need it off. I can see it. I know you can't see it on the camera. And you guys get to indulge my fantasy here because I want to see how this looks. So now we want to undercut and give ourselves a place to sign. We pick the smallest diameter. I didn't get to show you much about turning because this project doesn't do a lot. But if you notice how my body's moving, I hold the tool, I get the tool where it's cutting. And I'm getting a cut. And then I don't move, I'm locked in. And I move my whole body to make the cut. It gives me a lot smoother cut. But if we carved this one down and we just had little roots sticking out here and there, they wouldn't be in that far. So you're just turning flat when you're taking that off. So whatever's comfortable taking it off, a push cut, a shear cut, a scraper. We haven't heard much lately. 5 or 6 years ago, we heard all this talk about scrapers are bad. We've scraped wood for thousands of years, and all of a sudden in the last few years, we have to learn to use a gouge. I've got some of my students I've got one gal in particular. She's taken 3 classes off of me, and she just can't get the hang of a gouge. But she does a nice job with a scraper. I don't see where it makes a difference. When you finish your project and your wife or husband says, "Wow, that's really nice," they didn't ask you what tool you used. That's it. It's a finished product that counts. So, okay, getting back to this, at this point, I usually put a little 3-point tool. I put a little line in there. Gives me a place to sign my name. I'm down to 1/8 of an inch or so on that. I would sand it at this point. I can sand this with the lathe running. I've got to sand this out here by hand. I'm not going to worry about sanding it now because I'll just sand it all by hand. I use I believe it's a number 3 carving gouge. It's an easy way to take off the bottom of a bowl or a box, anything you've got like this. I turn by hand, just a little bit of pressure on it. It cuts those fibers. And all you have is a little bit to sand there. Okay, so we've got the bottom off. We've got the wood burning done. We've got the wood cut for the, we cut the tree off the stump, so we got the hinge sticking out there. Now we want to just put some finishing touches on it. You can do this part in your lap, in your easy chair. I'm doing it up here so that you guys can, I'm just using this $6,000 clamp you guys bought. That's all I'm using it for, is a clamp. When I got to this point, they looked a little, I don't know how to say it, not right. Too stark. They didn't look tree-like. The bark on the tree is usually like a gray color, mossy color. It's not that. So I took some sandpaper. That's a piece of 80 grit. And just knocked it down. Now if you have a light piece of wood, maple, poplar, sycamore, any of those, this will probably show better. But instead of having those sharp edges on the bark, I've got the flat bark. I'm not going to do all of that because you guys don't want to watch me do all that. The one box, the big box over there, has acrylic paint dry brushed on it. A lot of them have just different color alcohol markers. Either way works. That's a 50%, and it's supposed to be cool gray, and it's on this cherry. It's coming out brown. On the lighter woods, it comes out a gray color. The green really looks good. It looks really mossy. So you just keep playing with, a mossy color, a gray color. After this, since this is cherry, I'll probably put green on it, and then I'll take some of that a dry brush with acrylic paints. You all know what dry brush is. You dab a little bit on a brush, preferably a stiffer brush. Wipe it on a paper towel so you don't have globs of paint on your brush, and just lightly drag it over the surface, and it'll just hit the high spots, and that would give me the gray bark. The burls that I've seen are darker, so I put a brown. When I'm done with all the coloring, Krylon matte finish. I don't want a glossy finish on a tree. So spray it on there. You've already got the inside waxed. I don't know what your friends are like, but the guys especially, the girls are fine, they don't do this. The guys they want to smell the wood. Well, they smell lemon. So anyway, that's it.